So I'm here with David Meyer, uh, who has a very fancy title, Senior Vice President of Product at Databricks.
Correct.
Awesome. It's my first time meeting you today, so that's been fun.
Yeah.
Obviously,
It's been great exchanging online,
yeah.
following each other.
Yeah, it's always fun. I guess you want to start off, David, by saying what is it that you do at Databricks?
Yeah, so Adam and I, Adam Conway.
Adam Conway,
yeah. Both SVPs of Product, kind of working symbiotically. You could think about it as inbound, outbound, but we both work on long-term product strategy across the product set. Day to day, I work deeply with a lot of our strategic customers and on a lot of the core engineering initiatives we have to kind of take us to where we need to be in the next few years.
That's pretty cool. When you look back at 2024, what is the product that perhaps wasn't necessarily the most important for the company, but what is the product that you felt the proudest about, or the feature that you felt the proudest about?
Well, I mean, so since day one, Ali says we all think that simplicity will win. Databricks has been too complicated to use. And things like routing everything through Unity Catalog makes it much more opinionated in design and simpler to use. But the thing that I'm most excited by is something that I've wanted to do for the 7 years I've been at Databricks, which is finally workspaces can be fully serverless. You see that, when you go to signup.databricks.com, one click, you're using Databricks. But if you think about, there's so many organizations that use Databricks where the DevOps team, the data team, can't support all the department teams that want to do Databricks, right?
Yeah.
They want to leverage the tools, use Genie to talk to the data. And now literally one click, boom, you got a workspace. And anything you've shared to it over Unity Catalog is available. Mm-hmm. But you don't need storage buckets. You don't need S3, ADLS, any of that. You don't need any VPC, VNet, CIDR ranges to
all the fun infrastructure, right. all the remaining infrastructure elements that folks normally had to leverage with your typical Databricks
so basically, we want to let anyone in a company that uses Databricks access the data assets that people work so hard to create, which are right now basically used by developers, even if they're SQL analysts as developers. Let them be used by anybody. Get Databricks apps, Genie apps, AI, BI dashboards out to everyone. And I think these serverless workspaces are going to be a key fulcrum for that.
So perhaps a transformation from Databricks is just for the data engineer or the data scientist, as was the typical image that I used to have, to now that you've had SQL serverless, that you have serverless more like, hey, you can be very technical.
Yeah.
At the same time, you can be more of that analyst, more of like that specific business value-centered person too.
Yeah. And have you played with Databricks apps?
Yes, I have. I need to do a few more things, but
it's pretty raw, but pretty fun.
Yeah, I like the abstracting of the infrastructure. I think that's the obviously. I mean, that's the bulk of what it is right now. And now I see you're gonna have like is the marketplace thing public or no?
The marketplace,
the app marketplace, is that a public thing or no?
I don't know. I'll talk about anything.
Okay, it's okay. Okay, yeah. Now that with the app marketplace, I think that's going to be very value added for businesses.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see that. Now, I guess kind of related to that question as to what was impactful about 2024. What do you look as the most what are you looking forward to in 2025 that you can share with us?
I mean, it's funny. I was meeting with a bunch of partners and customers earlier, and we did like an AMA thing. And I don't want the Barney questions. I want I like the hard questions. We love to work with customers on really the difficult things, right? So the things I'm excited about this year are the difficult things.
Yeah.
So as we've kind of abstracted away the storage wars, there's still a lot to do.
Yeah.
Bring Delta and Iceberg together and
more in that Unity catalog experience.
Yeah. So then Unity catalog is so powerful now, and it's so you can plug it into any IRC catalog, Glue, Hive, Metastore. You can federate these catalogs, but the patterns of how to federate these things at scale to work across these multinationals, we put together building blocks, but now we have to understand what systems can be created with these to operate companies at global scale. And I think that the catalog federation is going to be a big piece of that. But then the kind of operating model of how you mesh these things together is going to be really important.
Yeah. And I would say you touch on something, and it's like you don't just want the easy stuff, right? Because everyone's doing the easy stuff.
Yeah.
And it makes me think, I was having a conversation with a person from NVIDIA yesterday, and he was saying, they want to solve the hard problems.
Yeah.
That's their focus is on that, because that's what no one else wants to touch. And really that's what drives business value, like solving the hard to solve ones. So along those lines, one of the things that I enjoyed from the Ask Me Anything talk today is, I think maybe I'm misquoting you here, but you said something along the lines of, you want to hear the critical feedback, not just privately, but even through online stuff, so that people can see like, hey, this are the pain points that we have.
Yeah, I meet with customers all over the globe, and the thing that I hear, which I think is very authentic from customer after customer, is the thing that means most to them about Databricks. Yeah, our technology is great and it scales and it works, and that's somewhat unusual, but that we want to dig in with them, engineer to engineer, and understand what they're really trying to achieve. And we want all the vocal feedback, but it's not like, I wish this feature would work this way. What aren't you able to achieve in your core
What's the
goal?
Desired outcome?
What's the desired outcome? What's the best imaginable way for it to work? And is there a natural, principled way that we can get to that without violating our long-term strategy? Like, people want us to do things all the time, which we'll never do.
Yeah.
Because they don't make sense for us.
Yeah.
And that we don't think it doesn't make sense for the customer long-term. We think they'll paint themselves into a corner if they go this way. But I think that's the key is,
what's the final outcome? What are you trying to get to achieve?
Yeah, I think that's the key for every customer. That's why I love meeting with all these customers.
Yeah. And that's like that understanding of what's the final goal. That's something that, like with Cathara Labs, so our CEO Jeff, that's one of the things that he drills every time. He's like, people don't want to talk about technology.
No,
they want to know, what business problem are you solving? What do you want? So it's a very, very good point. Now, since you like some of the challenging questions, I'll ask you a challenging one. Looking back, perhaps, doesn't have to be recent history. It can be a little bit further back. What is perhaps a product or feature or decision that you made that you're like, oh, that was not the right one, but now we gotta fix
I'll give you I have a million examples. So wind back the clock to 2018. And we're trying to scale for a lot of these organizations, right? Long before the wisps of Unity Catalog. And the question was, how do you roll compute out to people and let them use that compute to access data only they can access? And we realized a way that would be very coherent for our customers was pass-through identity.
Yes.
Right?
I remember that.
Where, for example, you could do this on AWS, like a SAML to SCS token thing, and access underlying IAM stuff on behalf of the user.
Free for all almost.
So it seemed like it gave customers what they wanted in a very powerful way, and it kind of deferred the governance problem to them in the substrate S3, ADL, whatever it was that they had. But it turned out that it painted them into a corner, right? And it was really good for the first couple of years, but at scale, it was unmanageable for them. And it's kind of like now with the evolution of the catalog, and you don't want to have file paths in your code. You want to have table paths. You want to have that separation. So I think I pushed hard for pass-through authentic identity in a lot of the compute kind of patterns, which really was a mistake. It was a mistake because it didn't consider what that would mean 2-3 years down the road with what customers had to deal with as they brought more and more teams and more data into the substrate, and the substrate started to evolve. The migration became insurmountable, right? And when you move to these table paths and other things, it becomes very clear how you can migrate to a future storage mechanism, for example. That's very long-winded.
No, that's okay. How are you doing, by the way?
Good.
So you're familiar a little bit with some of my content, and I know obviously you get feedback from a ton of different people.
Yeah.
Okay. What is perhaps the one piece of critical feedback that I've given that you're like, Josue is absolutely right? And on the flip side, what is the one piece of feedback that perhaps I've given you? You're like, I completely don't agree with Josue. I mean, and again, you hear a lot.
See, now you're trying to access like short-term memory and stuff like that.
I know. Well, like 9 p.m. at nighttime.
Yeah.
So
I think it's really useful when, for example, you do a lot of comparisons between systems.
Yeah.
You know, when the times when you go into like the details of this is the use case and even the code and the queries I ran.
Yeah.
So it's like reproducible. People value, because so many people are like lost in the marketing bullshit, right? And they want to understand what it really means for their workload, and you're very good at distilling that. But sometimes some of your quicker takes are a little. It's hard to ground in my use case I'm trying to implement and how applicable the quick take is, if that makes sense.
No, I appreciate that. That's
like the
good
pro
feedback.
con stuff.
Yeah.
You kind of want to know when you're doing what.
Okay.
You know, so like the grounding that with the deeper stuff. But in terms of specific takes, I'd have to like look through your posts.
That's fair. I appreciate that feedback though. That's and it's good. And what's funny is with the last comparison that I did, right? Like that's what happened. I was like a quick thought. Okay, here's my take on this. This is slower, and then I had that post was a lot more had a lot more traction than I expected, to be honest. And of course, it's the post that I did at 2:30 a.m. in the morning on a Saturday, or well, technically it's Sunday at 2:30 a.m. in the morning, and I'm like, oh shoot, I should have put a lot more details into that. And then that's what I did the next day, because I was having a lot of rightfully skeptical folks that were like, hey, why is this? I'm like, okay, I'm gonna post all the details, and I didn't do it because I was trying to hide anything, but I didn't do it because I was tired. I thought this is going to be like a post that maybe a few people are going to see. And
and I think the thing people appreciate about your content, and I appreciate about it, is you're genuinely curious and well-intentioned, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, for example, most of your criticism against Databricks, I share, and I've been screaming for, it's hard to move systems in a certain direction. And so I'm like, like if you talk about like serverless cost controls and those kind of things, we need to evolve those in a way it's very easy for customers to manage. But then you did the deep dives with Greg, right?
Yes.
So you like
Greg is
you
awesome.
do the work,
I love Greg.
you do the work to inform the decision, and I think that's the key.
No, I appreciate that very much. Now, final question, perhaps is if pretend you're not working at Databricks.
I'm not working at Databricks.
You're not working at Databricks.
No, I'm not.
He quit us of this month. Why would you? Obviously, different scenarios have different platforms that people might choose, but in a general perspective, what do you think makes Databricks stand out? Again, not as senior VP of product.
No, yeah. I think it's the general alignment of interests. So Databricks is very engineering driven, and those engineers deeply want to understand what customers are doing with the product. And so, I've been head of product a bunch of places, and my job was usually to protect engineers from customers. And if you do that at Databricks, the engineers will hate you, right? And that's a fundamental difference. And that's what I hear from customers again and again is that's the value. So you might go through some painful migration or something like that because of things we haven't,
done yet,
figured out before or come across. But then 2 years later, we've worked with you to work those kinks out, and you're on the glide path. And I think that's the true cultural identity that Ali is preserving at all costs as we scale. And it's hard to scale, but I think it's just where our interests are aligned. And if you find a partner where your interests are aligned, it's going to be good for you in the long term.
Yeah, awesome. I love this guy, so I say this with much love. How big of a pain is Franco?
He's like the best kind of pain in the ass.
Yes, he is.
I really appreciate his pain in the assness. So I think he's driven a lot of the core fundamental, improvements in Databricks SQL and everything about it. So I think I don't like happy customers. I like customers to be happy.
Yeah.
I want to hear what isn't working.
Well, in generally speaking, I think that's what I've appreciated about Databricks culture. Like, I think in the past, sometimes I've not necessarily data platforms, but other tools and whatnot. Maybe sometimes brought up concerns or criticism, and folks tend to be more defensive, even though I'm not doing it like,
it's very human.
Yeah.
It's very human.
Yeah. But Databricks does balance, I think, that very well, where it's like, oh, you don't like I've been a very strong critic of DLTs. And instead of like, hey, stop saying that's a very important product for us. It's like, oh, there's flaws here. We need to make them better.
Yeah, and we've done substantially, refactoring things in order to address it. It's because of that kind of feedback.
And I'm very excited for Lakeflow too. So it's been fun. So awesome. Thank you so very much for your time.
Awesome meeting you in person.
Thank you so much.